Hello again, and my name is Åsa Sonjasdotter. I'm a visual artist as well as a researcher, writer, and organizer, so I'm working with different things. And I'm also a very thankful receiver of seed money. It's been really great to be recognized in that sense, and also to be part, finally, of this network, which I was very curious about all the time. So I'm really happy that we can meet and share experiences. So I will present some of the results of the research I have been undertaking within the framework of my project that I was funded for. I was funded for a one-year initiation project, and it was aimed at providing a base for extended research on the rather, I would say, deep time intra-species co-making of humans and plants that take place in the act of cultivation and breeding. And breeding, which I'm focusing on, it triggers an abundant transformation and also diversification of the plant's morphological and operational characters. So at this time of the year, you can just think of apples, for example. How many different ways that apples can smell and taste, and the colors and textures and all that. And it's within a species, and it is in this socializing with humans that this happens. And there is something quite extraordinary about that, I think. And still, this capacity within plants, as well as within other organisms, you can think of yeast in a brewery, beer brewery, or chickens on a farm, for example. This capacity is surprisingly under-recognized within existing knowledge systems of either the arts or the sciences. So, for example, you don't find carrots or onions in the Natural History Museum, right? However, you do find cacao and coffee and that kind of stuff, which is naturalized. That has to do with the colonial history. And you also don't find cabbage and stuff like that in the Ethnographic Museum, at least not in the collections. So where do you find them? Well, you find them in the seed banks and in the gene banks, right? And this is something that I find quite interesting, and I will come back to that. So through interdisciplinary research, this project aimed at inquiring these human-plant relations that makes, that I have said already. How I solved this task that I've given myself in this project was that I began to study the emmer wheat, which is what you see in this image here. It's the first crop known to have been cultivated in Scandinavia, as well as basically everywhere in the region of Northwest Europe that shares this event of a glaciation that retracted some 12,000 years ago. So we have a very specific geographical and geological situation where the ice sheet retracted, life could re-migrate into that area. And so it means that you have a very different and specific soil memory in this part of the world compared to the neighboring area or other parts where you have a deeper soil memory. So for example, emmer wheat was domesticated, as it's called, at that very same time. It's believed to be domesticated about 12,000 years ago in the Levant, in the Middle East, which means that there is a different soil memory in this part of the world. And the research was undertaken through different strands and methods. The first was based on a collaboration with the Baltic Art Center on Gotland, which also came to involve the Museum of Gotland, where I was invited as a researching artist in 2018, which meant that I had access to the very knowledgeable archivists and curators, and also to the collections. It led to this exhibition that's on now, so if you come to Gotland, you can see it. And it will also be published as a book later on with archive books in Berlin. And the second is a film that I will show a very short excerpt from later. So first the exhibition. So what I did at the Gotland Museum was that I researched all different objects and things in the museum that are related to the emmer wheat. And I presented these objects in. I composed them in this. So it was not exactly a linear narrative, but in a presentation that was more associative. And in these large vitrines, they were placed on huge cardboard bales that are recycled material from contemporary grocery chains. And this was a way to kind of accentuate that this is our way of relating to food production today, right? The food is sent long distances and it's packed into this cupboard. And when you research the the first traces found of agricultural activity in this region, and I focused then on Gotland as the case, but it counts for more or less all over this area in Northwest Europe. What you find, the objects you find that are really interesting is samples of charred soil from slash and burn cultivation, because this was the first cultivation method. You cleared the forest, and you cultivated in that clearances that was burnt, and also grazing of cattle impacted the forest. And the tool used for this was an axe. You could cut down the forest with this axe, which you also find in the collections. And maybe the landscape came to look like this. This is an old photograph from an area of early settlements before excavations started. Here you can see how excavations were initiated. And things that were found in the ground were, for example, this sickle of flint that was a tool for cutting off the grains. And we know that they cultivated grains because we have charred grains in the soil. And the archaeologists don't know what other plants were maybe cultivated, but they know that the grains were cultivated because they were in the baking ovens. So the charred grains have remained. And you also can find grinding stones for making flour. And what is very special and unique on Gotland is that until the 1960s, these very old grains were still in cultivation. This is entirely unique for this whole area. And this means that it's been possible to revitalize these grains. And this is where the work that's shown in the film will continue on that strand. And so back to the bales. What I found interesting as well with these bales is that they're made of organic material and maybe even from trees, right? So what this very early farming practice of slash and burn meant was a depletion of the soil. It was not just the slash and burn technique, it was also the grazing of the cattle in combination. And this led to the broadleaf forest and the rich red soil that had accumulated in this area from after the retraction of the ice sheet. It simply got depleted. It was a non-renewable resource. And you can see the traces of this still in southern Scandinavia, where you find the beech forests. So it's famous for the beautiful beech forest. They are beautiful. Nevertheless, they are also a marker of the depletion of the soil, because beech can thrive in lesser nutrient soils. So that can be just interesting to know. So actually, when researching the history of cultivation in this part of the world, you don't really find examples of sustainable agriculture. I think agriculture per se has a difficulty in being sustainable at all, actually. And so what I proposed then in the exhibition was the method of composting, because actually the cardboard that is the waste is excellent for vermicomposting. Because when you only have food waste, it gets too wet, and actually the carbon in the paper is perfect for the worms. So basically, slowly now, the exhibition is also composting, as it is shown. And since it's on for half a year, it's maybe also entirely composting. However, I'm not sure the artifacts of the exhibition and the collections will compost as well. Let's see how efficient the worms will be. But that was a way to kind of build the narrative also around the whole installation of the exhibition. What we also did, and what is as important, was that we cultivated and propagated the emmer grains at the open-air Bunge Museum, which is also part of the Gotland Museum. So here we have some sporty guys out on their old tractors. And we grew then this emmer, the emmer wheat, and we could circulate and share it as part of the exhibition product, so that people can actually not just take with them these stories of the crops, but also actually cultivate them, and in this sense cultivate not just the plant, but also the incredible memory that is actually accumulated and stored in the plant. So that was a way to narrate somehow this plant of the emmer grain. And the other way I researched this is by following the work of the agronomist Hans Larsson. He is at the Alnarp Agricultural University in South Sweden, as well as he is the initiator of an association called Alcorn. And I have to show this film from a different... so here you see Hans Larsson. And what he's been doing is quite extraordinary. He has, since '95, been picking out the grains from the gene bank, from the Nordic gene bank. He's been lifting the grains out of the freezers and putting them in the ground on his farm here that you see in the film, and basically test cultivating each and one, which is a very different thing compared to storing them, because you know, the way from having them in that freezer and actually saving the world is a huge operation that is very, very told in the narrative of the gene banks and so on. What he's doing is also that he's selecting the ones that seem to thrive, and he's propagating them, and he's now actually cultivating them in such a way that he can give them back to the farmers. And all this is done within the framework of the Alcorn Association, because it's an operation that is beside the law. The law is made in such a way that no one thought someone would do what Hans Larsson is doing, which means that it's not regulated. It's not exactly against the law, it's beyond the law, which means that what he and the farmers are doing within their association is possible as long as it happens in the association. If they would start to sell the grains, it would be illegal. Here, it's just an excerpt of the film. It's 35 minutes, and we are on his farm, and he's talked about the conditions for the breeding and the propagation.
En liten bit där från blåsten
och
fick skydd av häcken, så märkte vi vilken vinddämpande effekt de har, träden. Och här finns allt historiskt material då från vetets utveckling. Och det här är enkorn. Det var alltså den första vetet som människan odlade för 10 000 år sedan. Och det var ursprungligen ett vilt gräs. Och sen det som hände i utvecklingen var att de här blev drösfasta. Alltså vilda gräs, de tappar ju sina frön ner på marken. Och på så sätt sår de sig själva. Men de förädlade vetena är ju drösfasta, det vill säga de kan stå i fältet tills odlaren bestämmer sig för att skörda. Och det var det som hände med det här som gjorde att jordbruket kunde utvecklas. Det där enkorn, det korsar sig med ett annat gräs. Och då bildas det här emmervetet som blev nästa steg i jordbrukets utveckling. Och den odlades då mycket i de gamla kulturerna, Egypten och så vidare. Och om ni ser här närbilderna på de här så är det ju fantastiska färger. Och sen den här kommer att bli nästan svart när de mognar. Så detta är en röd emmer. Den blir alltså röd när den mognar. De blommar ju nu, man ser ståndarna här. Ja, det är ju de här pollensäckarna som hänger ut här. Jag kan visa ett litet fint ogräs här. Alltså normalt så försöker man ju ta bort ogräsen, men det är många ogräs som inte är så skadliga som man kan tillåta. Ogräsen är också väldigt viktiga. Så normalt låter jag det finnas rätt mycket ogräs. De kan ju vara viktiga för insekterna och så vidare, för fåglarna. I det gamla materialet så har man ofta väldigt mycket färgvariationer. Man vet väl inte riktigt varför det finns de här färgerna, men det finns alltså kopplingar till sånt som antioxidantinnehåll i plantan. Jag har använt det mycket vid selektion, att jag gärna selekterar sånt som har färger. Jag ser det som en kommunikation mellan mig och växterna. Så detta är också en gammal lantvete från Gotland, en spältvete. Det är också en gammal spält och det är en borstspält. Och det finns väldigt ofta i det gamla materialet. Vi har inga borst längre i modern vete. Jag jobbar ju huvudsakligen med selektion av sorterna. Och om man selekterar någonting så måste man ju vara väldigt noggrann så att man ser väldigt små skillnader. Och det innebär att när den här parcellen börjar mogna så väljer jag ut de mest intressanta axen för mig, för mitt öga. Ofta är det ju, alltså man har hållit på väldigt länge och man har selekterat i 20-30 år. Så får man en blick för det. Det är väl som alla yrken, att man måste träna sig.
This was an excerpt in the middle of the film, and I also would like to say that the reason we worked with film is that Hans Larsson is using film himself as a method for observation when he is breeding from these old varieties. So it was an appropriate method also as well to use in order to mediate his work.